So some of our projects are more difficult to explain than others, so we have this little battle.
There's a project that's still ongoing in Spain, in a small region outside of Barcelona. And we applied for this project with an idea to do it in a small town, which was the way it was commissioned. But then when we came there, they gave us a rural region to deal with 25 small villages instead of a small town, so we had to kind of get our head around how to readapt the idea. And the idea was trying to work with small stories, how people have stories about places that can be very insignificant. But
for example, you know, I don't know, you may have a particular place in your neighbourhood where every time you walk around that corner you remember when a guy went past on a blue bike holding a chair. And somehow, it's not important, but it locates you to that place.
And it's often stories that are meaningful because there might be a chair factory next to it, or a chair. So there's a reason why this small story happened. And we build up together, they start to build an image of the place down up. The image that you find at tourist book, or in even the way people describe the place. So we try to collect those images.
So we visited, over about a year, we went backwards and forwards and visited various different groups. And they're very disparate groups spread out all over this landscape. So we went to the women's group while they were doing a crafts workshop. And we met a guy who spoke only Catalan, and he had to translate, the lady next to him translated it into Spanish. She translated it from Spanish into French for Charles, and Charles translated it into English for me. A very long kind of roundabout conversation.
It's not the same story.
Yeah. Well, maybe not. Chinese whispers on it. But for example, just talking to him, and this was, it was a story we didn't use because it was too kind of grandiose. But we were asking, the day before we'd been working with school children and trying to pick up some of their stories about where they played or had a tree house. And so we asked him when he was little, where did he play? And he said, well, when I was 4 years old, I was holding a machine gun in the trenches in the Civil War. And you kind of, unless you dig a little bit inside these places, you don't really find those nuggets which are a personal story. So we wanted a way to group those things together and represent them as part of the character of the place. So the region is a wine producer. It's a very low yield but very high quality wine, and it seems like the perfect place in which to try and represent these stories. So in negotiation with the denomination for the region, we've agreed to have individual stories printed to go on the back of the bottles. And these bottles go all across the world because they're of such high quality. So you'll have a personal story when you turn your bottle round. From one person to another person, which maybe changes the taste of your wine slightly, or enhances it.
What's the name of the region?
It's
wine?
Priorat.
Yeah, the geographical region is Priorat, and within Priorat there's two denominations of wine, and the one we work with is Montsaint, which is written at the bottom.
So these were just some examples of illustrations of stories that we were told. For example, this is just a local fiesta we attended, which was fantastic. But
at the same time, those fiesta, some people were telling us that because it was a very rural place when they were young, it was a really important social gathering because it would be the only time of, maybe 20th fiesta during the year, but it was the only time where they could really go to the village and meet the girls there. So often, you know, something that appeared quite insignificant, build up all this relationship and families.
So the next one, a lady told us that she used to go picking the grapes with her mother, and they'd go back to the cooperative where they crushed the grapes. And one time she fell into the vat of wine, and she got out. But the story she said, she put on the bottom of her story, I just thought you might like to know it might be the wine you're drinking. And the other one is in these villages the bell rings every day, it's, at every hour, all through the night. And one person's story was, I remember the day when the bell stopped ringing because it was broken. And they said they loved it. It was a very special moment. And it's those kind of things which help build a picture of a place. Almost on cue. Okay. So this was a project in Birmingham, and it's two regions of the city which are about to go through regeneration. So a similar situation as before, but what we wanted to point out was the fact that a lot of the qualities of place are removed and sterilised as parts of new developments. So we wanted to have a sort of visual game of representing some of the things which existed in that place. So this is an existing billboard, advertising hoarding, and we represented exactly what sat behind. And so if you were out of sync, if you were away from it, it didn't match. But if you were in sync, you would see the train appear on one side, disappear behind, and come out the other side. So the first, and I apologise to the Eldorado guys because you've heard the story before, but we put it up, and within a few days, the commissioner contacted us and said, "I'm sorry, but someone's graffitied your artwork. Would you come down and kind of tell us what we should do? Should we reprint it? How do we?" So we came down and it's written pointless on the thing. By the time we arrived, someone else had written underneath, "You know, we really quite like this." So it was provoking the kind of discussion we were hoping it would.
It looks like it's in the sign on top of the building there.
It does.
Yeah.
Does that look like it was intentionally put there?
I think there's a kind of quite strong art community around here. I think it might have been done with a slightly artistic eye. Yeah.
You know, it's like a static block.
Yeah.
Did you say that this is an area that was going to undergo regeneration?
Yes.
So will your work continue to be there after things
No.
that it matched with have changed?
No, it was a temporary project. Although we did leave them, we didn't remove them, we just left them to have a life of their own. And it was nice, we found a blog site that started discussing what these were or where they come from. And that whole idea of labelling something as art so people value it is not really part of what we're interested in doing. We like the work to talk for itself. And the fact that it had this life on the blog site kind of proved to us that people were noticing the work. So we did it in various different situations, like this one, which is a for sale sign, a bit like on the back of the building there. So this thing here is where you have an advert for the building for sale in the region. So we did the same with one of those.
Is it double-sided?
No, just single-sided. And so it sat out with this segment. And a lot of public art projects in the UK particularly want artists to engage with community or see them as a way of fixing social situations. And we tend to stand away from those, kind of trusting that a piece of work in itself has that dialogue. And with this, the guys who were working in these factories came out, they engaged with the work, but on their own terms, without us telling them what to do, and began this discussion about the history of the place, where they come from, what it was, just through this small intervention.